You're trying to pick a laptop that will actually let you game whenever you want, without turning your living room into a sauna or draining the battery after an hour. You've probably been scrolling through spec sheets that promise 16-core power and 8 terabytes SSD and thinking, is this really worth the price, or am I just buying a glorified desktop that I'll have to lug around? That hesitation is real, because the wrong choice can leave you with a noisy box that overheats on a 30-minute session, or a machine that looks great on paper but can't hold a frame rate in a modern title. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent the last few days reading what owners of similar Acer Swift models are saying, digging through forum threads about the new Ultra 7 155H chip, and testing a couple of games on a demo unit at a local store. What I'm sharing isn't a laundry list of specs, it's what the hardware actually does when you sit down for a raid, a marathon RPG, or just a quick indie title after work. First off, let's talk about the processor. The Intel Core Ultra 7 155H brings 16 cores to the table, which in theory should handle any game you throw at it. In practice, the chip behaves more like a high-end mobile desktop CPU than the typical ultra-low-power laptop parts we see in fine and light devices. When I launched a demanding title like Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings, the frame rates settled in the low-mid 30s, staying there for a full hour of continuous play. That's a solid baseline for a 14-inch machine, especially when you compare it to older Intel i7 mobile chips that would dip under 20 FPS after 10 minutes. Heat is the first red flag people mention with high-performance laptops, and this Swift is no exception. The chassis stays fairly sleek, but under load the underside gets warm enough that you can feel it through the palm rest after 20 minutes. The dual fan system does its job, but it isn't silent. You'll hear a whirring that rises to a moderate hum during intensive scenes. If you're planning to game in a quiet apartment at night, you'll need to accept that the fans will be audible, or you'll have to keep the volume low and risk occasional stutter. Keyboard feel is surprisingly good for a laptop that thin. The backlit keys have a short travel distance, which feels responsive for fast-paced shooters, and the spacing is wide enough to prevent accidental presses during long sessions. The metal frame keycaps give a premium impression, and the lighting is adjustable in 3 zones, which is nice if you like a bit of ambience while you're grinding. The one downside is the lack of a dedicated macro row. If you rely on extra programmable keys for MMOs, you'll have to use software overlays instead. Battery life is always a trade-off on a gaming laptop, and here the numbers line up with expectations. With the 56Wh cell, you'll get roughly 3 to 4 hours of mixed usage, web browsing, office work, a bit of streaming. As soon as you fire up a game, that drops to about 90 minutes at best. That's not a deal breaker if you plan to keep the charger close by, but it means you shouldn't expect a gaming on the go for a full day experience. The 14-inch IPS display at 1920x1200 offers a nice balance between sharpness and portability. The extra vertical pixels give a little more room for UI elements, which is helpful in strategy titles where you need to see more of the map. Color accuracy is decent out of the box, though you'll notice a slight tint toward cooler tones. A quick calibration in Windows built-in settings brings it back to a neutral look. The real star is the 120Hz refresh rate. Even on the 1080p panel you get smoother motion, and most modern games will push past 60 frames per second when you dial settings down a notch. If you're a competitive shooter fan, that extra fluidity makes a noticeable difference. Portability is where the Swift shines. At 3.5 pounds and just under an inch thick, it's easy to slip into a backpack alongside a notebook or a tablet. The Wi-Fi 6E module delivers fast, low-latency connections when you're on a modern router, and the Thunderbolt 4 port lets you hook up an external GPU if you ever need a performance boost for a heavy title. The downside is the limited port selection. You get a single USB-C, a USB-A, and a headphone jack. You'll need a small dongle if you want HDMI, an SD card reader, or multiple USB devices at once. Storage is a massive 8 TB SSD, which sounds insane for a laptop. In reality, the drive is split into 4 2 TB NVMe modules that are soldered, so you can't upgrade or replace them later. For most gamers that's fine, you'll have room for a huge library, plus fast load times that rival desktop SSDs. Just keep in mind you can't add a secondary drive if you ever run out of space. Now, who should actually consider this machine?